Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have, from Worcester, we have a children's author, and this book, wait till you hear about it, Maria Gianferrari. I said it correctly. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
She wrote this book. You know how we're getting coyotes out left in our yards, bobcats and all this? Look at this one, Bobcat Prowling. Your illustrator is top-notch.
He's amazing, yeah.
How did you meet this person?
Usually the way it works in traditional publishing is when the publishing house accepts your manuscript as an author and not an illustrator, they match us with the illustrators.
I forgot that part. Yeah, if you're self-published, you can pick your own.
Right.
But you got very lucky.
Yes. And
this is the most beautiful.
This is actually the second book that we've done together. So the first one was on coyotes. It's called Coyote Moon.
Coyote Moon.
Yes.
Well, now this one, this is so easy. Would you say it's what age group, Maria?
Around 4 to 8, something like that.
That would fit.
Yeah.
That would. Oh, they're beautiful, and they're so real and so easy to read. I gotta say that this cat reminds me of my male tomcat.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite pictures in here. She's going to tell you all about this book, but I can't pass this up. Where is this? It reminds me of we have a huge tomcat. This is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a cat?
I love that. I don't have a cat, but I'm an animal lover.
This is typical. The type of pose. Ugh. I love this. Now, tell us how you got this idea to do this book.
Well, as I mentioned, Bagram, who is the illustrator, and I did another book together, and we worked with Emily Feinberg at Roaring Book Press. And so I had Coyote Moon and another book under contract with her, and Hawk Rising, which I can show you. It's a predator book, so we were trying to come up with a backyard predator that's equally fierce as a coyote and a hawk, and then we were talking about a few different options and then came up with the bobcat. So that's how came upon this particular book.
They're beautifully done. Now, there's coyotes, there's bobcats, and lynx. Tell everybody what the difference is.
Between lynxes, I think they have bigger paws, and they're found further north. Their range is a little bit further north, and so their paws they're like snowshoes. Yeah. So they prey on hare. So where bobcat territory and lynx meet, they sometimes prey on the same animals.
What is it, the coyote looks more like a hound, like a dog?
The coyote looks like a wolf, kind of, and actually in this part of the country, they're a hybrid between, the eastern coyote is also called a coy wolf because they have some wolf DNA, so they're larger than the coyotes that you would see in California or Arizona, for example. And the lynxes, I think they have fewer spots, or maybe they don't even have spots, whereas bobcats do have the spots.
Makes me wonder, aren't they all related to our cats at home?
Yeah, that would be a question for a geneticist. I mean, I know that they're ancestors, but I don't know exactly what the relationship is, and I think they can't interbreed, so that's one way that you can tell they're not part of the same general family.
You go to Southwick Zoo. You'll love that if you've been there over in Mendon. Oh, it's huge. You know, you stand there and you watch the lions and the tigers, and you think, I've seen my house cat do that. The same thing.
Yes.
Now, this is your second book about the cats, right? The bobcats.
I actually have a book. It's a kind of a zany book called Officer Cats and Houndini. But it's not related to this kind of naturalistic book. But I do have a book coming out next year called Being a Cat, A Tale of Curiosity, and that's a fiction book about domestic cats.
Oh, now that's going to be great. Don't forget to tell me, because I love books on cats. When did you start writing?
It was something that I always wanted to do, but when we have one daughter, and after she was born and I began reading all these books to her, it sort of rekindled my dream of being an author, and I just thought to myself, what am I waiting for? I might as well do it. And so I started earnestly, attending conferences and working with a critique group and trying to improve my craft. So that was back. She's going to be 20. So that's kind of when my journey officially started. It was a dream, but I never sort of did anything about it until
You
then.
came here from Virginia,
Yes.
but you grew up in Massachusetts?
I grew up in a little town in New Hampshire called Keene, New Hampshire.
Keene? Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with
not
it.
too far from here.
No.
And then my husband and I, we lived in Waltham for many years, moved to Virginia for his job, where we lived for 7 years, and then we moved to Worcester at the height of the pandemic, so that was
my
not
God.
fun. So we
Brave.
haven't really gotten to know Worcester, but
Yeah.
I'm very delighted to be back in New England because my whole family is here.
Yeah. This book shows you must have done some excellent studying about this bobcat, about their habits. It's about, they're called a yearling, right? When they
Yes.
leave their moms, but they're still young, right?
Yes.
And he is trying to find a place to call his territory.
Correct.
And I love the way it feels, the way the pictures are. I'm like a kid reading it. Of course, they're meat eaters, right?
Yes.
Just like our kitty cats.
Right.
And the coyote doesn't want him in his territory, and the lynx doesn't want him in that territory. So he's got to find his own.
Exactly.
And he finds it not far from a neighborhood.
Right.
So they could be up there sleeping, like these little boys are in a tent. And the bobcat will eat and rest, and his journey has been long, but now he's home.
Right. And as I said, we live in Worcester and we have bobcats in our backyard. I saw a bobcat about a month ago in our yard. Last spring after a snowstorm, our dog spotted one crossing over the fence. So they're sort of elusive, but they are around us. As long as they have, food and shelter and water, they can live among us, which is pretty
It's
amazing.
interesting. Somebody told me that all of these developments that are coming in are pushing the animals further out towards us in the city.
I think, that's true of probably a lot of creatures, that they get displaced by construction and stuff like that. But it's also, I think, one of the things that fascinates me as a writer and a learner is how these wild creatures coexist and live right up, among us. They're our wild neighbors. The same is true of coyotes.
Do you think, would they eat our bunny? We've got a lot of little bunny rabbits.
Yeah, I think rabbits are their favorite prey, really.
Because I can't tell if it's a boy or mama or a daddy rabbit. But you can tell little baby ones.
Yes.
But suddenly they vanish for a while. And I'm
Right.
wondering, where did they go?
They have a lot of predators that are
Hawks.
Yeah, hawks, owls,
Yeah.
and whatnot. And then even sometimes people who let their domestic cats out, they kill, especially the babies.
Yeah, I know.
So, which is very sad. I mean, at least with a wild animal, it's going to eat it. But oftentimes with the domestic cats, it's just a present for the owners. So that's
Have you
kind of
always
sad.
been interested in wildlife?
Yes. I grew up, as I said, in Keene, in a small town. One of our favorite houses, we lived in a bunch of different houses, was down the street from a farm and across the street from a maple sugar house. And basically we played outside all day, and my mother would ring the bell when it was time to come in. So I think nature was like my playground.
And I grew up like that too, surrounded by the forest. Keene State College is right there.
Yeah, my dad used to teach there.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
When was he there?
He passed away in 2003, and retired in 93. So I'm trying to remember. I was actually born in New Jersey, and we moved to Keene when I was 3.
Okay.
So he had been there teaching in the biology department.
Because I went to Plymouth, it's sister college.
Okay, yeah.
All part of the UNH.
UNH system, correct.
What did you major in? Did you go to? You didn't go to school
I
there.
didn't
no.
go there. No, I majored in English in college.
Who would have known that you would have done so beautifully?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
like I said, it was kind of something that I always wanted to do, but I didn't really have the courage to do it. There's a lot of failure and rejection involved as well, and finally I got to the point where I thought, what am I waiting for?
Yeah.
I have to at least try before I fail.
I know. I tell a lot of my authors who are self-publishing. I said, they say, well, I don't want to get rejected. I'm like, well, you can avoid this whole thing. Self-publish it, get it out there. It's a hit. Then if you want to, send it to a publishing company. But if you want to, you could spend a lot of time waiting. Do you really want to do that? When you can? There's so many places authors can go.
Right.
Oh, my God.
And sometimes traditional publishers do pick up self-published titles. It doesn't,
Yeah.
I think, it happens more with, I think, young adult novels and stuff like that, especially when there's a fan base that like people write fan fiction and then it gets popular, and then sometimes the
That's a big thing
publishers
right
pick
now.
them up.
Young adults of fantasy.
Yes.
Some of their books are really good. I can get into that Children's books too. You know, we have a wonderful, here in Upton, a wonderful children's section of our library, as a lot of libraries do. Maria will go downstairs and leave a copy of Bobcat Prowling if you would like to borrow it. Maria, while we're talking about that, how can they reach you?
The best way to reach me is probably my website, which is my name, maria@mariagianferrari.com. That's the easiest way. There's a contact button.
How far will you travel if they want you to come?
How far will I travel?
Yeah.
I haven't actually been traveling that much because of the pandemic, but it would depend on the situation.
Yeah. Okay. So you would stay in New England?
Yeah, New England is places where it's easier to drive to versus having to take public transportation is usually preferable.
You're in Worcester, and you are so fortunate to be close to. Have you ever heard of the Tatnall Bookseller right over in Westboro?
I have. I haven't been there to visit them yet.
Get there because they have. I've given presentations. I send my authors there. Beautiful big room in the back. If you seem ready for this, you could give a presentation. And then people, maybe the newcomers, they sit up front near the cash register. And they can, well, you know what, people have to go by you.
Yeah.
And they do very, very well. There's that, and there's
there are a lot of great bookstores. There's a new bookstore that opened during the pandemic down the street from me called Tide Pool Bookshop.
Sure.
And then Roots and Press is very close.
Yep.
They also have a kind of a cafe. And then another really great bookstore in the area is called the Silver Unicorn. They're in Acton.
Yep.
They do a lot of
they are all
events.
Good.
Yeah.
Barnes & Noble, of course. Have you got your books there yet?
I don't know. I mean, I think some of my books are there, but I'm not sure. I haven't visited the Barnes & Noble because it moved to Millbury,
We
right?
have it. We have it both. We have it in Millbury and Bellingham, which right here is very close to Upton.
Okay.
But the one in Millbury is, I could spend all day there. You would love it, really. Beautiful big children's section. Very welcoming.
Yeah.
I didn't stay inside that much during the pandemic. I always wore the mask. No, we're not one for big groups, my husband and I. Get in, get out, but I didn't stop enjoying what was open.
Right.
I couldn't, you get your shots, you wear your mask, you cross your fingers.
Right, I guess, yeah.
So your daughter now, she's 20, and now she's in college, right?
Yes.
What is she going to do when she gets out?
I don't think she really knows. I mean, she's going into her junior year and she's studying biology, and then she's minoring rather in forestry and green building. So she'll probably do something environmental, but I don't know exactly.
I wonder where she got that interest.
Yeah, probably from me, and then her dad's a scientist, so it's kind of like a combination of the two. Yeah.
How did you and he meet?
We met through at the time I was working at my uncle's office, who is an immigration lawyer, and my husband's originally from Germany, so that's how we initially met.
That's excellent. Show us these other books that you have.
Sure, I can show you.
Busy.
So I mentioned Hawk Rising, which is another book in this Predator. It's a companion book to Bobcat Prowling and Coyote Moon. And the illustrator is Brian Floco, who won the Caldecott Medal for a book called Locomotive a few years back. And again, this has beautiful, very
realistic.
Realistic art. And you can see, like, this is a perfect
I love it because it doesn't
Predator.
go overboard on detail. I love that. It's simplistic. Kids will love that.
And then this is my first book of poetry. These are just called the folded and gathered sheets before the book is actually published. And so this comes out in October. It's called Ice Cycle, Poems About the Life of Ice.
So that'll be coming out this October?
It's coming out in October, and the illustrator is Jiting Chen, and it's published by Lerner Publishing, so that's a different publisher than Bobcat Prowling. And then the book that came out right after Bobcat Prowling is called Being a Dog.
Being a Dog.
A Tale of Mindfulness.
That looks really good. When did that come out?
This came out in April. And so Pete Oswald is the illustrator. You may have heard of he has a series that he's illustrated by Jory John called The Bad Seed and The Good Egg and Smart Cookie. So he's the illustrator of this book.
I love that.
And this is the one that has the follow-up called Being a Cat, A Tale of Curiosity, which comes out next
How about
April.
being a guinea pig? That would be cool.
Yeah, guinea pig. I like rodents. We had pet rats.
You have rats?
We used to have them when our daughter was young.
Yeah.
But they're very sweet.
Fish and guinea pigs and kitties is as far as I got.
Yeah. And we had hamsters growing up as a kid. And this is another...
a tree.
One of my books called Be a Tree.
Yeah.
And it's illustrated by Felicita Sala, who is based in Rome. But I'll show you, just her art is just absolutely gorgeous. And this is one of my books that's been translated into 16 languages. So it was my first book to be translated so widely. And I think it's,
When did it come out, Maria?
This one came out in March of 2021.
It's still really recent, too,
Yes. And let's see, I'll show you one of my favorite
though.
spreads.
You strike it lucky with these illustrators.
Oh,
let me
yeah,
tell you.
I've been very
Oh,
fortunate.
look at the fruits.
Yes. And she put, this is my first book actually that didn't feature animals directly, but
Yeah.
she still put some little creatures in there and some dog bones for me, which is very cute. Yeah.
Very clever.
So.
How long does it usually take you to write a book?
It depends. Especially with the nonfiction books, I'm usually doing research first. And then I kind of have an idea of how I want to tell the story. So, for example, with Bobcat Prowling, the two books that preceded it, Hawk Rising and Coyote Moon, were stories about parent predators hunting to feed their children. So Coyote Moon is a story that takes place at night, and Hawk Rising takes place during the day. And so for this one, I wanted it to be about the yearling bobcat finding its own territory. So
This is so cool. I mean, when I see it, immediately I think of our cat.
Right.
I really do. The mannerisms.
Yes, the
That's
way
why
they move is amazing,
I know it.
right?
Again, Maria, how can they reach you and get your book?
It's the best way. If I love to support local independent bookstores, so you can go to an organization called bookshop.org and look for your favorite local bookstore there and just type my name in and then the books will come out. IndieBound is another one. You can do that by zip code and they'll tell you the nearest independent bookstore in your area. And then the other ways are Barnes & Noble or Amazon.
Right.
You can get them there as
How
well.
do you spell your last? Spell it for our viewers.
It's spelled Gianferrari, like the race car.
Beautiful,
Gianferrari.
But it's Italian, right? And
Yes,
your
it's Italian.
husband came from Berlin.
Yes, my husband's from Berlin originally. He grew up there. And
That's
then
a-
West Berlin at the time when he was growing
That's
up.
quite a jump.
Yes.
That's amazing. Does he miss Italy, or he didn't even know it? He didn't.
He traveled quite a bit in Europe since
Yeah.
that's where he grew up. But we were just actually in Berlin a couple of weeks ago visiting his family because we hadn't seen them since
You were
before the
brave.
pandemic.
Very brave.
Yeah,
How
I
was
mean-
it on the plane?
Well, the good thing was that everybody had to wear masks,
Yeah.
so that made me feel more
No
comfortable
fighting.
as well.
No fighting.
No, actually, on the way back, we took Lufthansa back, and there was some sort of altercation with somebody
Oh.
in another part of the plane
Yeah.
that I don't know what happened. Maybe the person didn't want to wear a mask or didn't want to sit down, and they actually had to call the police and the fire department. So
When you were still in the air?
well, it delayed our landing at Logan because this
Yeah.
person wasn't cooperating, and so the pilot had to announce it. Sorry, apologies for the delay. But I was trying to Google it afterwards, but I
Yeah.
never could find out what happened or who
I mean,
was
at least you weren't in
responsible.
the air.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
tricky.
there are just some people that are just unreasonable. It's like just wear the mask
Yeah.
and basta.
What is like? What do they say? When in Rome, do as a Roman
Yeah,
do.
right. And it's just, it's just the respectful thing to do. You're
Sure.
protecting other people, and it's not that big of a deal.
No. Did your daughter go with you guys too?
She didn't go with us this time.
Yeah.
She has a job. She's working this summer, so
Good.
she didn't come with us.
What's the next book, Maria? We're waiting.
Well, the next book is the Ice book coming out in October, and then next year I actually have 5 books coming out.
You 5?
Yes.
You've been
5.
busy.
I work with different publishers, so the books come out based on their schedule, not mine. So I would prefer to have fewer books because it's a lot of work to publicize them and promote
Right.
them.
Sure.
But
What are these? What are they?
so the first one is Being a Cat of Tale of Curiosity, illustrated by Pete Oswald. That comes out in April. Then I have a book called You and the Bowerbird. That's being illustrated by Maris Wicks, who's a local author. She lives in Somerville. And it has a comic-y style. It's another Roaring Book title. And then, so I actually have 2 books with Roaring Book coming out next year. That book, and then a book called Two Dogs with Love, which is a love letter to therapy dogs of all kinds.
Oh.
And that's being illustrated by a British Indian illustrator named Isha Lobo.
Yep.
Then I have a book called Thank a Farmer. That's coming out from Norton, illustrated by Monica Mackay, sometime in the fall. I don't know the exact release date yet. And then the last one is called Fungi Grow with Diana Sudika, and that's coming out with Beach Lane Books. And that
So-
has amazing, I love her art so much.
You wrote these books all in 1 year?
I actually wrote these books at different times, and so, for example, the book To Dogs with Love, we had a different illustrator that had signed on, and then for, I don't know, personal reasons, she ended up dropping out, so that delayed the publication of that book until they found another illustrator. So it was actually acquired back in 2018, but it's just coming out next year. So sometimes there are those kinds of delays that affect the publication of a book, too.
You are still a prolific writer. Do you belong to any, or do you lead any writers' groups?
I have an online group, an online critique group, actually two. One is a local one in Massachusetts, and I joined when we moved here, but it ended up being online because of the pandemic.
The Zoomy thing, yeah.
Yeah. And then another group that I joined back like 10 or 12 years ago, and we're still actively critiquing each other's work. And then I also belong to a nonfiction kidlit chat group, so we're talking about different events or different situations and how things are evolving in the nonfiction community for kids. And then the organization that many of my writer friends belong to is called SCBWI, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and they have a regional chapter in New England that's very active.
That's
and
great.
Have an annual conference every year.
I know where your books would make a hit. Remember I mentioned Southwick Zoo?
Yes.
Over in Mendon. I think it's the biggest New England zoo there is. I know the director over there, and they have a fantastic gift shop, actually two, when you first come in or go out, and then into the zoo itself. Children love this kind of thing, so you might want to connect with her. A little hint for you.
Yes.
Because this is perfect. Absolutely. I would be drawn to it if I had my little grandchildren.
Yeah, the cover's amazing.
Really, it's easy to read. The children can, when you look at it, I would say you're 4 years old to 8. That's great. Do you always like to hit that area?
Yeah, I primarily write picture books, so that's generally the age group that I'm targeting when I write.
And they can read it themselves.
Yeah, and it also depends. A lot of teachers that teach high school use picture books because they're self-contained, and you can talk about the craft of writing and word choice and that sort of thing with your older students as well. And
Maria, do you want to stay with animals more, or do you think you're going to go into another part?
Probably I'll stick with nature type books. So that's kind of the thing that I'm most curious about and most interested in, observing the natural world and different ways that we can inspire actually children to become environmental stewards, because that's something that's really important.
Right, the forest rangers up in New Hampshire, and all.
Climate change scientists and whatnot, all kinds of things.
All kinds of things, definitely. You've probably been over to the Worcester Library. It's humongous. It's big.
I actually, I go to the Tatnuck branch to pick up my books, and I usually reserve them online. And a friend of mine showed pictures from a recent visit there, but I actually haven't been, again, since the pandemic.
Give it time, yeah. But really, it's a fantastic library, and they have a gift shop.
They have a gift shop at the library?
Yes, they do.
I had no idea.
Worcester, unless they've completely turned it around. Beautiful. You go in, they have remodeled. There's a big gift shop on the side. The children's section is down at the back. I'm sure you'd be most welcome there, really, because when families come in and the child immediately sees this cover, I've seen it happen. They'll go right for it. That looks like my kitty at home. And you've already spiked their interest. And you've always loved wildlife, right?
Yeah, I think, growing up, I was kind of a shy kid, so I preferred, in many ways, the company of animals, because you don't really have to talk, and you don't have to, it was a way to connect, and so I still feel that kinship with creatures and with nature and the natural world, definitely.
Being so popular now with your books, was it hard to leave shyness behind? To come out and just be able to get out there?
It was quite a challenge in the beginning. I remember how nervous I was when I had my first book came out in 2015.
Yeah.
And I was incredibly nervous just to go to the bookstore event where I was going to be surrounded with friends and family. So my public speaking has improved over the years, and I've become a little more confident. But and doing school visits and talking to students, I love to connect with them. But it is still kind of draining. It involves a different kind of energy than, this extroverted kind of energy that doesn't come to me easily, but I've learned to tap into it, I guess, so to speak.
You mentioned something about therapy dogs. You're working with those people too?
Well, I have a book called Hello, Goodbye Dog. That was my first book that came out, and in the story, the dog becomes a reading dog. And so I did a couple events with local reading dog organizations, and I think that's just a wonderful thing. It's great for reluctant readers and students that are shy about reading aloud. They can read aloud to a shelter dog or a shelter cat, and that improves their confidence. They don't have somebody judging them or correcting their mispronunciation. It's just a wonderful thing, and then they're bonding with animals at the same time.
Sure, they do that with the Grafton Library up here.
Mm-hmm.
They have, at least they used to, they have the animals come in, and they're so cute. The kids are sitting there reading to a cat,
yes.
a dog. So, Maria, how can they reach you?
Through my website's the best way, Maria@MariaGianferrari.com.
And if they wanted you to come speak, you're willing to travel throughout New England.
Yeah.
You would do that.
Yes, definitely.
That's really good. Were your parents, before we close, were your parents good readers? Were you surrounded by books? I was.
I think, I wasn't a huge reader actually as a kid.
Yeah.
I would read the same books over and over, the books that I loved, and I was fascinated again with like nature and facts. And so I remember one of my favorite books was a book with state capitals and flags, and I would pore over what the state birds were and those kinds of things. And the natural world and nature was what fascinated me most. And so Ranger Rick magazine, for example, was one of my favorite things to read as a kid.
Yeah, that's a good magazine.
Yeah.
It's still out there, too.
I think it is still. I had a subscription for a long time when our daughter was little, but then I ended it. But yeah.
Did your parents, did they read a lot at all?
My mom read a lot. My dad was a scientist also, so he was doing more scientific kinds of things. So not a whole lot. I don't really remember being read to a lot as a kid.
Yeah, I had the opposite. My mother kept reading to me at nighttime and reading. And I was now 8 years old, and one night she says, "Jan, you're old enough to read to yourself." I'm like, oh. She would be all the animals. She would make believe. Mm-hmm. Who wouldn't want her to read to them?
Know, exactly.
Well, it's been great to meet. We could get you back on with your new books coming out. Maria Gianferrari, and I said it correctly. Mm-hmm. She is the author of Bobcat Prowling. Go on downstairs to the Upton Library. Pick up a copy. And adults, too. You enjoy it and read to the kids and have them read to you. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Maria, for being
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.